The first product we can talk about is the base of our nutrient line, right? So the base of our nutrient line is the BC Nutrients. Right? BC Nutrients is the 3-part mix, but there's only 2 parts that use at any given time. So it's a boost you're always going to use. It's the central part of the formulation. And then the grow you're going to use during the grow phase, and the bloom you'll use during the bloom phase. So it's an easy, essentially 2-part formula that you're going to use. There's several selling points to the BC that other fertilizers don't have. The 2 biggest selling points for the fertilizer, other than the fact that it performs, and that's the #1 thing that people look for out of a hydro fertilizer, is that it works. It's got to grow nice, happy, healthy plants, no deficiencies, with a solid yield in the end. That's a given. Aside from that, what hydro growers look for out of a formula is something that's easy to use and that's low maintenance. So the 2 biggest selling points, other than the fact that it works great, is low pH drift, very, very pH stable product. And we do that, we accomplish that the way we formulate the nutrient. A lot of hydroponic nutrient manufacturers use pH buffers. We don't use any pH buffers at all. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is pH buffers lose their effectiveness, right? They're not as effective at the end of your reservoir change as they are at the beginning of your reservoir change. You'll start to see pH fluctuations. Manufacturers add these buffers to their nutrients like you would if you owned a fish aquarium, and you're going to add a pH buffer to that to help balance it because it's not balanced. Right? You're having to add this chemical to your nutrient solution to correct an imbalance in your pH. And like I said, the problem with that is those buffers are good initially, but they lose their effectiveness fairly quickly. So you start to see that pH drift. What we did that was different is we wanted to get away from those buffers completely. So we formulated the nutrient to be pH balanced to start with. The other big selling point about the main nutrient line is the cleanliness of it. It's extremely water soluble, it's extremely clean. When we talk about a clean hydroponic fertilizer, that's really what we're talking about, is making sure it's fully water soluble and it's not precipitating. Precipitated nutrient is nutrient that was once dissolved fully in the water and then has since fallen out of solution. It's a salt again. It's no longer available for plants to for the plants to take it in. Plants can only take fertilizer in when it's dissolved in that water. So if you see any salt, that's unavailable plant food. It's a mess to clean up. So those are the 2 biggest things. We're able to keep the fertilizer clean by having low pH or minimal pH fluctuations. Every time that pH fluctuates and you have to add acid or base, it's going to precipitate some of those nutrients and cause that salt buildup to happen. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth when we get some of the other products, but precipitation, nutrients falling out of solution, you can start with a perfectly clean reservoir with pure water and add your favorite 3-part nutrient, BC, right? And then what will happen is one of those nutrient ions will fall out of solution, right? And then it's like a snowball effect. It's going to continually get worse and worse and worse, like a snowball rolling down a hill. It starts to just have one chemical ion falling out of solution, and it gradually gets worse and worse and worse. So starting with a really clean starting point is a definite step in the right direction. If you look at the labels, just to talk about what's in the different products, the Boost, really all it contains is calcium and iron. All of your micronutrition is in with the grow and the bloom. We separate the calcium and the iron in the Boost to help keep it a clean product. Calcium, out of all the mineral salts that you use in a hydroponic fertilizer, is the one that doesn't get along with any of the other mineral salts. It likes to react and precipitate. You can help prevent that to a certain extent by using good quality ingredients, good chelating agents, but also keeping it separate while it's in a concentrated form. So that's why you see the calcium separated in the Boost. And then if you read the directions, it'll always say add the boost first. That's to help get that calcium fully dissolved in the water before you add the rest of the nutrients. So they're not, in contact with each other when they're in that concentrated form. Right. Root Tech Cloning Gel is one of our oldest products that we've had on the market. One of the most popular rooting gels that are on the market. Partly because of the price. It's got an incredible price compared to all the other gels that are on the market. And the other big selling point, the reason why it's the most popular out there, is the concentration. If you look at the active ingredients on the Root gel versus the other leading brands on the market, you'll notice that our concentration of the active ingredients is substantially higher than the other gels on the market. Another big difference between Root Tech and the other leading brand is, all the other leading brands, as a matter of fact, is we use a water-based gel, where a lot of the other companies use alcohol-based gels, and there's some subtle differences in what that means to the end consumer. One is alcohol-based gels have alcohol in them, right? Anytime you put alcohol on tissue, it has a drying out effect, whether it's your skin. If you have a cut, you put alcohol on it, it's going to dry out your skin. Same thing with the tender cutting. So you dip it into the gel that's got the alcohol in, it's going to have that drying out effect, and that's really the last thing you would ever want to do to a tender cutting you just severed from its life support system, right? So that's one reason I don't necessarily like the alcohol-based gel. The other reason is probably a little bit more relevant, is most of these rooting jars are multiple use jars. Even the smaller ones, you're going to get several rounds of cuttings out of it. So what you do is you take it home and you break the seal and you use it, and then you put the jar back up on your shelf, and you might not use that product again for 6 to 8 weeks. What will happen is alcohol is a lot more volatile than water. So it's going to evaporate off, changing the consistency of the gel. It's going to be a lot thicker and goopier. It's not going to be as easily applied to the cutting that second time around. With the water-based gels, water will evaporate off, but it's not near as volatile as the water, so it's going to keep a closer consistency to that original gel, so it's still easy to use. All right. So if you've ever had a tray of cuttings that looked like it took a little bit longer than most to take off out of that propagation stage and actually get into aggressive growth, that can happen because you apply too much rooting hormone. So less is always more with these gels. Let's talk about Thrive Red, which is Thrive Red and Green, which along with Root Tech is our staple. That's another one of our oldest products that we've had out for a long time. Customers have been using it for a long time. There's two formulations in Thrive Alive. There's a Thrive Alive Red and a Thrive Alive Green. The Thrive Alive Red was formulated first, and what it contains is a lot of different commonly used plant tonics that are usually purchased and dosed separately, but we took them all and kind of put them all in one bottle just to make that application process much simpler for the people who are using it. The first list of ingredients that we could talk about is the seaweeds. It's got a full complement of seaweeds. It's got 3 different types in there. It's got the first type of seaweed is the seaweed that you find in 99% of the products that are in the shelves. It's Ascophyllum nodosum. It's Atlantic coast seaweed, and it's really popular because it's abundant, it's relatively cheap, and it's rich in vitamins and hormones. It works great for growing plants. So we wanted to use that one for sure, but we also had 2 other types of seaweeds that we wanted to include. They have some funky names, so I'll just call them by their generic names. One's called a giant kelp and one's called bull kelp. And they're found off the Pacific Northwest coast, off the coast of BC. And we picked those 2 specific seaweeds to add to this product because they're extremely rich in vitamins and hormones. Extremely rich. They're found in the cold waters up in the north where you get a lot of streams and rivers feeding into the ocean, so you got a lot of micronutrient content. And then you also have a lot of hormone value to them. The giant kelp specifically can grow, I think I heard, up to 1 meter a day. So it's extremely fast growing in nature, so it's got a lot of those naturally occurring growth hormones that are in there.